The draft is over, and the Chiefs and Bills not exactly connected like, well, last year when the teams traded and the Chiefs ended up taking Xavier Worthy with the pick. Both teams kind of drafting for need here, although in Buffalo, and this was fueled by the general manager of the Bills coming on WGR and kind of, making a spectacle of how, he's tired of the criticism about what he hasn't done at wide receiver. Jalen Royals, for me, in the Bills draft, the only room I have that would feel right to be critical about this point is like round 4, where, you needed defensive players. They got them. Wasn't exactly the best year for receiver. Didn't fall into your lap.
Right.
Royals is in Kansas City, and here we go. Like already this week, they're on the field, and, some people are excited about him. Are you?
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. He's 6 foot, he's 205 pounds. He's got a little bit of return game in him, although I don't know that the Chiefs will use him. They have a decent returner now in Remigio. But, the Chiefs, there was a thought that they might take a receiver fairly early, probably day 2. Potentially day 1 if everything broke right, but it didn't. To play behind Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Browns there for a 1-year deal. And they need to do depth. And so, Royals is an interesting guy. I thought they might take him at 63 or 66. I thought that was probably the sweet spot for him. And when they didn't take him there, I said, okay, well, they're not going to get him. And then they passed on him again. And I thought, well, I guess they just really don't feel like they need a receiver. And then he was still there in the 4th round. I said, okay, fine, I'll take him. This year, I think his ceiling is probably the 4th receiver on the team, unless there's injuries that there could be, or a suspension, which there could be. But, yeah, I think of all their picks, they had some pretty good value throughout the draft. I think he was probably the best value in terms of where they took him and where most people expected he'd be taken.
You mentioned possible suspensions impacting things. As you know it, as we're talking right now, Matt, where do things stand with Rashee Rice?
Nothing's changed, to my knowledge. It's been very bizarre. And, of course, when you're getting into the law and courts, that stuff can be very bizarre. But he was charged last year with 8 felonies, resulting in an alleged, at this point, there's video of some of it, like a hit and run down in Texas where he was traveling at a very high rate of speed. And, since then, everything's kind of been a limbo. To my knowledge, there's been no court dates. There's been obviously no plea bargain. It's just kind of sitting there. And so, look, the NFL didn't take action last year. He played. He got hurt in week 4. He's out for the year. He looks to be on schedule to be back for the season. Might be back for training camp. The question now becomes, does anything move legally? If it doesn't, they may wait another year to suspend him, or they may not. I would imagine at some point they have to. But they might sit there and say, look, until there's some movement on the legal side of things,
right,
we're just going to kind of wait it out.
What do you think, dare I ask, because here we are in Buffalo talking about wide receivers all the time, and it's sort of become an obsession. What is your opinion of the importance of the position? Because both the Bills and the Chiefs, I think, really test you on this. I mean, they both have the great quarterback. They both have, either won championships or, won, in the Bills' case, 5 straight division titles, tons of success, 30 points a game last year. But both teams kind of did it without obvious answers at receiver. The Chiefs have Travis Kelce, although he's, old now, but still, productive and important. Did the Chiefs or the Bills tell an important tale about just maybe whether the position is overrated or just what its importance is?
I think the Chiefs and the Bills are major outliers in the sense that as great as Lamar Jackson is, I think he needs Zay Flowers. He needs really good tight ends. We saw him earlier in his career, and he was great. But when they had really poor receivers, his passing numbers were not particularly good. If Joe Burrow, for me, is a great player. And he's hurt sometimes, but he's great when he's on the field. What does Joe Burrow look like with the Bills receiving core or the Chiefs receiving core? It's probably not like what he looks like with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I still think he would be good, but would he be leading the league in passing? I don't know. Allen and Mahomes, to me, are on their own stratosphere. They're in their own stratosphere. They're on their own tier. Where those two guys could play with all of us and win 12 games. Like, it's just they're going to make plays. Obviously, Allen's more of a running threat than Mahomes is, but Mahomes runs when he needs to. They make throws that most people would just be taught don't ever even attempt that, but they do it, and they do it all the time. So I think for teams like the Chiefs and the Bills, I understand the Bills fan who sits there and says, hey, I want a number one receiver. I want a Stephon Diggs in his prime without the drama type of guy. Great, I get that. The Bills can win the Super Bowl with Khalil Shakir as the number one receiver. They can. I watched the Chiefs win a Super Bowl with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Believe me, it's possible. You can do it. The Bills have not lost in recent years in the playoffs because they didn't have a number one receiver. They've lost in the playoffs because they can't rush the quarterback against Kansas City. It's killed them. Every time they have lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs, it has been because their pass rush has not showed up. And if they get a pass rush next January and they punt, they'll beat them. Then if they don't, they won't. And it's going to be the same thing until they get a pass rush.
How is this offseason gone for the Chiefs, considering maybe how humbling, although maybe it's just getting boring, to get knocked around like they did in the Super Bowl? Yeah. Was there overreaction to that? Maybe underreaction? Like, what's the temperature there? And where do the Bills fit into it, if anywhere? Is it, like we're like the little brother for Chiefs fans, or is there like, oh no, I'd hate to see that team again?
No, listen, I would tell you, for SI, I cover the league nationally, but as I'm sure even a lot of people listening, I came up covering the Chiefs, and I would tell you the Bills are the one team that Chiefs fans respect. They are the one team in the AFC that I think Chiefs fans look at and like, all right, if they play the Bills in a playoff game, you got to buckle up because Allen can beat them. Allen is the one quarterback that when they square off, the Chiefs don't have a decided advantage at the position. Now, you want to sit there and argue about which guy's better, whatever, fine. But both of them are so dominant that you can do – look at – now, listen, not to bring up a sore subject in Buffalo, but look at that play that Allen made on that 4th and 5. He's got 3 free rushers in his face. And it's a tough catch for Kincaid, but it's a play that Allen put him in position to make. As far as the offseason for the Chiefs, I think the season's been fine. Like they lost Justin Reed, which is meaningful, but they really like Jaden Hicks, so that's why they let him go. They brought back Bolton, who's kind of the quarterback of the defense. I think his value is more cerebral than physical, honestly, to them. They brought in Christian Fulton. They needed another body at corner, and he'll fit fine. He'll allow McDuffie to kick inside, which is really the biggest value he brings to them. And then they really threw bodies at the tackle position. They brought in Jalen Moore. They brought in Josh Simmons with a first-round pick. They traded Tooney and they kicked Kingsley Schumacher inside, which is going to be a downgrade. How much of one we're going to find out, but you're losing Joe Tooney. It's going to be a downgrade. But they're getting Rice and Hollywood Brown back, and they basically missed those guys all year long last season. So I think there's a thought that offensively they're more explosive. Defensively, they're probably about the same. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference. But, it was fun. I covered that game in New Orleans for SI, and my assignment was to go down to the Chiefs locker room and kind of paint the picture. And I kind of expected guys to be furious. They really weren't. It was silent. It was a combination of being very disappointed and very tired. Yeah. They just looked like a team that they were just spent by the end of that game.
Yeah. Matt Verderame, our guest here on the West Shore Hotline, SI, KC Sports Network, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. It's not been the norm in the NFL to have, mostly anyway, teams just lord over divisions like the Chiefs and the Bills have done. The last 2 years, the AFC's had the same 4 division winners and same 4 second-round teams, divisional round teams. Meanwhile, the NFC East hasn't had a team win 2 in a row since 2003 or something like that, which is incredible. Would you be surprised, Matt, if this changed in the AFC in 2025? Either Buffalo or Kansas City gets beat, or someone we just have never seen do it, get in there and enter the conversation to win the conference?
I would be shocked if you told me Allen and Mahomes are healthy. I would be shocked if one of those other 6 teams in those 2 divisions even approach winning the division. I just don't see. I think. Look, maybe I'm on a limb with this. I think New England's the second best team in the AFC. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think May's going to be good, and I think Vrabel's a real coach. The Dolphins, to me, are just on the way down. The Jets are rebuilding. And in the West, the Raiders are look, you take them more seriously because of Carroll and Geno Smith, but they're not ready to win. The Chargers, I think it's kind of inertia. They're basically the same team, with obviously Palmer and Bosa now in Buffalo. And the Broncos are the one you wonder, like, do they get better in Bo Nix's second year, or is that one of these things where we're watching Bo Nix in his second year and he looks like Mac Jones in his second year? So,
right.
I don't know. I kind of tend to err on the side of I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll be great. It was actually funny. Right before we were doing this, I was sitting down doing the AFC predictions for the magazine, for the NFL preview for us in a couple of months, and I just worked right through it and just immediately got to Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. And just sat there, and I still haven't figured out. I'm like, I don't know. Who knows? I mean,
right.
It just feels like those two teams are the best teams. Baltimore's there, but Baltimore's never going to show up in the playoffs, or at least hasn't. And it feels like it's Allen and Mahomes, and I mean, my God, how many times have they played each other now? It feels like, it was like the part 10, part 11?
Yeah.
And that game. They can just fast forward to the last 2 minutes of the game, and then we'll just see who wins. And that's what it feels like in the AFC right now. It feels a lot like when Manning and Brady did this for a long time. It was just those guys were going to be there, and who was going to win the big game in January.
I think it's 9. I think 2020, including playoffs, twice, once, twice, the last 5 years.
It's incredible.
It is kind of. And it doesn't, usually work like that, but I think, you talked about it, Matt. The big difference is probably the competition in the division. I think even Vegas is interesting with what they've done, and they're not going to slow play a rebuild there, are they?
No, they can't.
That's not what's happening at all with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, even Geno. So I don't know. I give them some. I think they'll be interesting at least.
I think they're better. I mean, look, they went from Antonio Pierce and whatever they were doing at quarterback last year to Geno Smith and Pete Carroll, and Brady's in that building. He'll have some professionalism. I know he's not the majority owner or anything, but he'll be there, and he has say in it. Spytek comes over as a GM from Tampa, and he's a respected guy in the league. I think, look, the thing that is going to be intriguing about that division is, again, like Denver and the Chargers, the buy them is better. I thought the Chargers going into the offseason, I looked at them and said, okay, they've got a lot of money under the cap. They have the quarterback. They have the coach. I expect them to be aggressive. They did nothing. If you look at what the Chargers did in the offseason, the Chargers lost Bosa for whatever that's worth to you. Maybe you'll love him, maybe you don't really care, but he's gone. They lose Christian Fulton. They lost Asante Samuel Jr. They lost Joshua Palmer, and they barely replaced any of these guys. So it's a very weird dynamic. I think the West is certainly deeper than the East because I think the Jets are clearly the worst team out of the two divisions. But yeah, like if you said to me, are the Chiefs and the Bills going to win? Are they more likely to each win 10 games or 13 games? Or they're more likely to go 13-4. And I think when they play each other in Buffalo, whoever wins that game is probably the 1 seed. Because if you look at Baltimore's schedule, that schedule is brutal. That is one of the hardest road schedules I've ever seen a team have.
That is incredible. It is incredible that last year, as you talk about this upcoming year, the Bills did all that. They rolled.
And
they
beat
Kansas
close.
City. But the Chiefs had such a dream trip, like in horse racing, where just winning all these close games, sometimes against bad teams. And how could we expect the Bills to have done anything more last year than they did? I mean, they lost 3 games until the Week 18 game where they rested everybody.
Right.
And it still wasn't enough to even tie. So kind of incredible.
It was. It was one of those years, too, where the Chiefs just kind of had a horseshoe in a certain area where it's just anything that could go. I mean, they had 2 games where one game was decided by them blocking a field goal.
Yep.
And then another game was decided a month later by them kicking a field goal that banked in off an upright.
Yeah.
I mean, they just had the hard thing, and this is really, I got to say, it's a credit to the Bills. And it really is a discredit to the Chiefs in one regard. The Bills, despite all the success that they've had, and maybe it's the Super Bowl still out there, and all these things, they a lot of times when they play bad teams, it feels like they hammer them. The Bills do not leave it to chance with 2 minutes to go against a lot of these poor teams. And of course, it happens sometimes, but it's rare. The Chiefs almost, you can just see it, like they're just bored. They don't. I don't want to say they don't care. They certainly care, but they will play with their food for 59 minutes. They look like they played the Panthers last year, and it took everything they had to beat Carolina. But they just, but then they got the ball and they had 30 seconds and Mahomes scrambled for 40 yards or whatever it was. But they just sleep. They don't. If you look at the Chiefs' schedule and you want to try to find the loss, look for when they play the Titans at noon in Week 8. And they will just not even show up for that game. They won't care. It doesn't matter. Then they'll play Detroit and beat them by 25 points, because they'll be awake for that game. But it's almost gotten to the point of the Chiefs where it's almost like, okay, well, call me in January. Who are they playing? Where are they playing them? They'll be awake for those games. But it's a challenge for them, I think, to be on their game every week more than it is for most teams.
Matt, in talking about both of these divisions and how the Bills and Chiefs have been lording over them, I agree with how you look at the AFC East here. I think New England is, in my opinion at this point, on May 6th, the second best team in the division. I think Miami is going the wrong way now, and the Jets are still at, the place that they've often been, which is trying to figure out which way is up. How soon do you think New England can get right? Because I also like May, and I think Vrabel's an excellent coach. I even like McDaniels there running the offense again. But is it too soon for them to, be a wild card contender even?
I think they can contend for a wild card. I think, the way I look at the AFC, to me, it's Kansas City and Buffalo. Then it's maybe a half step down. It's Baltimore, and then you get into, even though Houston can't block anybody, I still think they're a good team. And then after that, it's like, okay, do you like Pittsburgh? Do you like Cincinnati? Do you like Denver? Do you like the Chargers? Do you like New England? I mean, I think it's like those 5 teams for 3 spots, and of course, somebody's going to surprise, and it probably won't be the Jets, but it'll be those teams will fight in there. But I don't think New England can seriously put a charge into the Bills for at least another year. And it might even be a couple more years. I mean, New England is coming from a place where they were pretty bereft of talent for a couple of years there. But Vrabel's a real coach. May is a real quarterback. If they can draft well, and I like their draft this year, I think they did pretty well. If they can do that for a few years, then I think maybe you get to a point where you look at them and go, okay, New England could win 11 games. And if they split with the Bills or something, maybe there's a world where they can sneak in. But I think they're still a year or two away from really, challenging the Bills in a meaningful way.
Matt, quickly before you go, you said you're working on the preview for Sports Illustrated. When will that come out?
That's the August magazine. So we're busy putting that together right now, doing stories on it. In the meantime, God knows, go to SI.com. We have a ton of stuff. I got a couple pieces coming out in the AFCs next week. There's no shortage of content, and my God, the day the schedule comes out, I have a running blog of just everything that's happening that day, plus all these predictions at the end of it. So if people want to go to SI.com or my Twitter feed, they can certainly find all of it.
Trying to put the schedule together, you mean, during the day?
Basically, yeah, a jigsaw puzzle. It's
Me too.
Yeah, it's all about not getting screwed over by the wrong person.
Right.
Because all you need is one game in Week 8 that's wrong, and it's chaos.
Making sure you're not retweeting Adam Schefter or something.
Yeah, reaching out to every GM in the league and they're like, hey, is this right? And then, hopefully getting a response.
There it is. Thanks for your time as always, Matt.
You got it, guys. Anytime.